Thank you, General. I wish I could still fit in that uniform. Unfortunately, that's not to me, but I know all of you are very proud of wearing that uniform, as I was many, many years ago, almost 40 years ago. But on behalf of myself, the Tonawanda City Common Council and department heads, I'd like to welcome all the participants to the Vigilant Guard Urban Rescue exercise. Much time and effort has gone into making this a meaningful training exercise. A special welcome goes out to all participants who have traveled a long way to participate in this exercise. All our surrounding states that were already mentioned, and in fact there's some participants from Great Britain who I had lunch with yesterday, and I believe from Denmark, and I know from our good friends up north in Canada. So a special welcome goes out to them. Hopefully the training received here will someday help save lives in an emergency situation. That's what makes training exercises like this so very, very important. In closing, I'd like to dedicate this exercise, if I may, to all the military and emergency first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty. May God bless them all, and thank you very, very much all for attending today's event.
Over the years, the New York National Guard has had one leading partner through all the snow emergencies, the floods, through the attacks on the World Trade Center, and that partner has been the New York State Emergency Management Office, or SEMO. I'm honored today to welcome SEMO Director John Gibb at this time.
Thank you, General. I've been in this business some 27 years, and it never ceases to amaze me the level of commitment of our first responder community, of our citizen soldiers, in being willing to participate and making the sacrifices necessary to participate in exercises like Vigilant Guard. And as the Deputy Secretary said, this is by far the largest exercise of this type ever to be held in New York State. In our defense, I'll say that Governor Patterson and the Deputy Secretary set a pretty high bar for us, and they have high expectations in terms of how the state agencies will be available to respond and will respond in support of local government when disaster strikes. Nowhere has that been made more clear to us than the responses in Western New York. And even though Erie County, and the leadership of the county executive and Commissioner Skibitsky have really model operations in the disasters I've responded to out here, people in this business are not content to rest on their laurels. And again, the commitment to this exercise is to make ourselves better. A lot of the hard work will begin next week when we look at the goals and the objectives of this exercise, how they were met, how they were not met, and what areas of corrective action will need to be taken to be better ready for the next disaster of any type. So again, my thanks also go out to the folks that everyone that's here participating in this exercise made a sacrifice to be here, and it's to a good end, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Lastly, the scenario that we chose for this exercise was an earthquake scenario. And basically that came about as a result of extensive consultations with the earthquake experts at the University of Buffalo's Messier Center. And we're happy to have with us today the director of the center, Andre Filiatro, and also our geologist, Mr. Bob Jacoby, who's a professor of geology. Bob, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, General, for inviting me to this incredibly impressive operation. I'm really impressed. So I'm the token geologist, and 20 years ago, if you had been here, you would have said such a scenario was highly unlikely. There was only one known seismically active fault west of Albany in New York State, and it was the Clarendon Linden over there about 30 kilometers by Batavia. However, since then, the last 20 years, my colleagues and students and myself have found that there are literally hundreds of seismically active faults in New York State. Those faults are almost everywhere, including there must be a small one down here at Delaware and Sheridan, because that's where there was a very small earthquake some 10 or 12 years ago. So the answer is this scenario, although seemingly unlikely to all of us who live in a normal world with stable rock, it isn't unusual, and maybe not even unusual for New York. Thank you.
We're going to open it up to take any questions, but it's 2009, and 10 years ago at this time, we, the National Guard, along with the State Emergency Management Office people, were working on a plausible scenario, emergency response scenario called Y2K. Remember that? Which Y2K, we put a lot of time and effort into developing plans for Y2K, which fortunately on January 1st, 2000, we didn't have to use. But for us in the National Guard, we dusted off those plans basically about 18 months later for September 11th. And that was basically the scenario that we used to respond on that morning and the weeks following and months following. But what I'd like to do now is turn it over to our Public Affairs Officer, Colonel Fanning.
Are there any questions from members of our news media visiting here at this time you'd like to speak to? There are other venues here in the region. There's a training site in Lockport and in Niagara Falls as well. And we do have forces helping to augment the security at the Niagara Falls Buffalo Airport. And we also have other locations where we're doing the training. Some area hospitals will also be participating with us in the week ahead, where some of our helicopters will be doing simulated casualty evacuations as part of the plan. So this is a very integrated program. If there are no